DarkOfAllTrades here. Now before I begin, I want to preface this with, yes, I know this is a bad argument which some other YouTubers have taken apart before. However, I think there needs to be more voices taking a closer look at arguments like this. So those of you who may not be sure about how to handle this are better prepared and hopefully can shut this one down, at least at your local level. I know that it will likely not go away in my lifetime or yours, but it doesn't have the same impact that it's had when renowned guy who totally doesn't mangle the English language in an attempt to sound smart or deep, chopping words into a leafy side dish, Frank Turek, published it in 2004. As most of you probably already know this argument, let's get on to the video. Today's video comes from a channel with slightly more subscribers than I currently do called Calvary South Austin. You know what bothers me the most here for some reason? The fact that they didn't capitalize their name when they made their official YouTube channel. Do you think they know that you can do that? Even on mobile, most of the time the first letter of any text input is auto-capitalized. So how did this not happen? It's going to keep bothering me if I keep thinking about it, so I'm going to move on. Anyway, this video is titled, How Much Faith Does It Take to Be an Atheist? See, the first letter of that title was capitalized, so why? No, Dark, hold it together. Apparently, it's a clip from a clearly riveting sermon. The energy off this one Pastor Bungie Garrett is palpable. Hold on to the edge of your seats and get ready for some top-notch pasteurization? What is the verb? I'm going to look it up. Turns out I was right the first time. It's pasturing. No surprise that it's so similar to posturing. Anyway, enough shots at the guy. Let's see what Bungie thinks about how much faith it takes to be an atheist. I'm going to guess he thinks it's 14 faith units.
I believe it takes more faith to be an atheist than it takes to be a Christian. The reason I say this, well, it's because the atheist must believe that nothing blew up and then became everything.
If there's one thing I abhor more than linguistic butchering, it is someone else telling me what I believe, or in this case, what I'm required to believe, especially when they get it so very wrong. It is genuinely insulting to me and my intelligence. Do I get to tell Pastor Bungie that he must think that all sorts of barnyard and wild animals speak to humans using fluent human language? Do I get to tell Pastor BG that he must believe it is possible that he will get turned into a pillar of salt? Do I get to tell Pastor Bun Bun here that he must believe that vampirism is 100% A-OK, and in fact must be performed regularly? Fun fact, I don't need to, because that is all in the book he holds so important. So no, Pastor Pretends to Know Me, I find myself not must-believing that nothing blew up and then became everything. This is a common asinine strawman argument. I've not met a single atheist that actually believes that nothing, in the sense he's speaking of here, ever existed. As I have said before, just knowing that I'm an atheist tells you absolutely nothing about what I do believe. It is possible to be an atheist and think that matter always existed, so there technically wasn't a beginning to matter. It is possible to be an atheist and think that the universe was magically created by the magical primordial space crystal. One can be an atheist and think that only they exist and everything else is just made up by their brain. Heck, it's even possible to be an atheist and not hold a belief about how anything came to be. None of this requires a belief in God. Pastor Bungalow here seems to have mistaken atheist with theist. It is literally in his book that God, quote, made the heavens and the earth was without form and void. What was there before the heavens and the earth were created? What did God make the earth out of? By his own book, there was nothing, and then God made something come from it. Depending on what edition you read, there was the deep, which to my understanding is some kind of primordial water that their God hovered over. Was that what God made the earth out of? There are so many questions, but all in all, it would be more accurate to say that Christians must think that something came from nothing than atheists.
I get it. They want to tell multiverse and steady state and all these sorts of things. But listen, at the end of the day, you got to get back to nothing at some point in time.
Why? Why do I need to get back to nothing at some point in time? This guy thinks his God is eternal, so an atheist can think the universe is eternal. I don't really have a problem with ideas like infinite regression or that time operated differently pre-Big Bang, if before the Big Bang is even a coherent idea. I don't really want to harp anymore on the idea of nothing, so I'll leave a link to an article from Big Think on the idea of a more scientific view of nothing. I will point out that clearly this guy has heard of some titles of scientific ideas, to use steady state and multiverse, but just flat out dismisses them without further argument. Why do you suppose that is? I'm going to guess either he doesn't actually know what those arguments are, which is most likely, or he doesn't want the congregation to get interested in them and do a lick of research.
For the atheist who believes in no infinite being known as God, they either have to prove that matter has always existed, which we can prove it hasn't.
Can you now? How is that done exactly? Okay, I'm getting a bit frustrated, and I came in this expecting a bad argument, and I should have been ready for more blatant intellectual sleight of hand like this. And now I need to switch to professor mode. From a scientific standpoint, the prevailing cosmological model is the Big Bang Theory, which suggests that the universe, along with matter and energy, had a specific beginning approximately 13.8 billion years ago. This model is supported by observational evidence such as the cosmic microwave background radiation and the observed expansion of the universe. However, the Big Bang Theory does not necessarily address the ultimate origin of everything. It describes the expansion of the universe from an extremely hot and dense state, but doesn't explain what, if anything, preceded that state. In a philosophical or theological context, perspectives may vary. Some religious beliefs posit the existence of an eternal and transcendent deity as the source of all existence, while others entertain philosophical ideas about the eternal nature of matter and the cyclical nature of the universe. What is generally accepted is the initial singularity. The term singularity in this sense indicates a point where certain physical quantities like density and temperature become infinite. In such extreme conditions, our current understanding of the universe based on general relativity and quantum mechanics breaks down, and a unified theory of quantum gravity is needed to describe the dynamics accurately. Since in the framework of the Big Bang Theory, time, space, and matter are interlinked, the idea is that the universe's expansion started from this singularity, and it has been expanding ever since. As the universe expands, matter and space also expand, and time is part of this cosmic evolution. In simple terms, as long as there has been time, there has been matter in some form.
Or we can show the evidence that there's no logical reason to believe in that.
But that means something different entirely. Wait, professor mode. Okay. The claim we can show matter has not always existed is very different from the claim we can show the evidence that there's no logical reason to believe matter always existed. The second is a rejection of the proposition due to evidence pointing away from it, or at minimum, lack of evidence pointing toward the proposition. And the first is an acceptance of the counterclaim. I would hazard a guess that his evidence is from the Bible and not backed up by multiple branches of science.
But they believe. They believe that, it's always existed in this same way, or nothing blew up and became everything, and these sorts of things.
This seems to contradict his first point that atheists must believe that something came from nothing.
Well, it's because the atheist must believe that nothing blew up and then became everything.
If they can believe something always existed, then it's not something coming from nothing, disproving his own statement from not even 40 seconds earlier in the video.
Not only that, but the atheist must also believe that the disciples of Christ faked his resurrection and then went on to suffer the painful death of martyrdom, all the while knowing that they were dying for something that they themselves made up.
The assertion that atheists must believe in a deliberate fabrication of the resurrection by Christ's disciples overlooks the diversity of perspectives within atheism. Atheism at its core is a lack of belief in deities. It doesn't prescribe specific views on historical events. Individuals may approach religious narratives with varying interpretations, acknowledging the complex interplay of cultural, social, and psychological factors shaping these stories. Skepticism towards miraculous claims is not exclusive to atheism, and differing interpretations about the disciples' experiences can stem from a critical evaluation of historical evidence rather than a categorical assertion that they are intentionally fabricated events. The assertion that the disciples of Christ deliberately concocted the resurrection story and knowingly faced martyrdom for a made-up narrative is just one interpretation of many in the historical and religious scholarship. While some may posit intentionality in crafting the narrative to inspire followers, alternative perspectives delve into the complexities of belief formation within a religious context. Psychological factors, group dynamics, and the transformative power of shared experiences could have contributed to the sincere conviction of the disciples, challenging the notion of a deliberate fabrication. Scholars and thinkers explore a spectrum of possibilities, from genuine conviction to the influence of communal beliefs and evolving oral traditions. These varied perspectives highlight the intricate nature of religious narratives, emphasizing the need for an open-minded exploration of historical events without oversimplified assumptions about the motivations of those involved. What is more plausible, the occurrence of a resurrection event, as described in the Jesus myth, or the likelihood of a naturalistic explanation underlying the development of this religious narrative? We should encourage methodological evaluation of historical evidence, cultural contexts, and the evolution of religious traditions. While some may approach the Jesus myth from a theological perspective, others may engage in critical analysis grounded in historical and anthropological methodologies. This approach looks to discern between supernatural claims and the sociocultural forces that contribute to the construction of mythological narratives, ultimately fostering a nuanced understanding of the historical and religious landscape. Along with that, atheists are free to withhold judgment on what happened and take time to examine each idea without that theological bias.
Now, who's going to believe that? How much faith would it take for me to say, yeah, the disciples, they faked the resurrection and then they were willing to die for something they knew was a lie?
Excluding the idea that we only know how one, maybe two of the disciples died, which Paulogia has an excellent in-depth take on this, so check him out if you want to know more about it. It is too much for me to go on to in this video. Are there other possibilities for why the disciples would have believed the resurrection so strongly? The disciples' unwavering commitment to the Mr. Jesus myth may be attributed to a profound sense of religious devotion and intense personal experiences. If the disciples genuinely believed in the teachings and the resurrection of Mr. Jesus, their commitment could stem from a deep sense of spiritual conviction and the transformative impact of religious experiences. The disciples' adherence to the Mr. Jesus myth could be connected to the strong sense of community and identity formed around their association with Mr. Jesus. Social and communal bonds can significantly influence individual beliefs, and the disciples might have maintained their commitment to the narrative due to the solidarity and shared purpose within the community. The socio-cultural context of the time, including prevalent messianic expectations, could have played a role in shaping the disciples' commitments to the Mr. Jesus myth. The anticipation of a messianic figure might have influenced their interpretation of events and contributed to the perpetuation of the narrative. The disciples may have embraced the Mr. Jesus myth not only as a historical account, but also as a powerful symbol with deep allegorical significance. The narrative could have been interpreted metaphorically, representing spiritual truths and moral teachings, providing a meaningful framework for their lives and actions. The disciples' commitment to the Mr. Jesus myth might be linked to the transmission of oral traditions within their community. Over time, stories and teachings about Mr. Jesus could have been ingrained in their collective memory, fostering a shared narrative that persisted through generations. The disciples' commitment may be a result of their role in preserving and transmitting this oral tradition. There are a myriad of potential natural explanations, all of which are more likely than anything supernatural.
It's unreasonable. And so that's why I think that, for these two reasons alone, I think that it takes more faith to be an atheist than to be a Christian.
There are so many issues with this statement. I've already addressed the reasons given here, but let me examine that conclusion. The claim presupposes that atheism is a belief system equivalent to religious faith. Atheism, however, is a lack of belief in deities rather than a positive belief system. It doesn't inherently require faith in the same way that religious beliefs do. The statement implies that faith is inherently negative by suggesting that having more faith is a disadvantage. Faith in a religious context often involves trust or confidence in the absence of complete evidence. However, characterizing atheism as requiring more faith perpetuates the misconception that it is founded on irrationality or lack of evidence. People identify as atheists for many reasons. Atheists, like any diverse group, hold a range of perspectives, and not all atheists approach their beliefs in the same way. Some atheists may emphasize empirical evidence and reason, while others may have different philosophical or ethical foundations. Imposing a single definition of atheism neglects this diversity. The underlying implication is that having faith is a negative quality or disadvantage. This characterization overlooks the potential positive aspects of faith, such as trust, hope, and confidence, which can be found in various contexts beyond religious beliefs. Something even Christians could object to, the statement oversimplifies the diverse beliefs within Christianity. Different denominations and theological perspectives within Christianity hold varying views on doctrines and interpretations, making it challenging to equate the level of faith required across the entire Christian spectrum. Overall, this point smacks so hard of an argument for personal incredulity. He can't imagine how the universe exists without his God, and how people could die for a lie, therefore it must be false. There are plenty of objections one could come up with as to why the whole idea of "it takes more faith to be an atheist" is intellectually bankrupt.
And knowing that there's no evidence for these things, I would encourage you to consider, if you haven't already, the evidence that supports our faith in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which then helps us to see that Jesus is who he claimed to be, God incarnate.
If only theists would provide such evidence that didn't contain any of the fundamental flaws noted in the 3 pillars of Christian apologetics. And that's the end of his video. So what was actually said in this? It takes more faith to be an atheist than a Christian. Atheists must believe in a scenario where nothing blew up and became everything. There are alternative theories like multiverse and steady state, but they all need to trace back to nothing at some point. Atheists, in rejecting an infinite being, must either prove that matter has always existed, which can be proven false, or show logical evidence for their belief. Atheists believe in the eternal existence of matter, or the idea that nothing blew up and became everything. Atheists must believe that the disciples of Christ faked his resurrection and knowingly suffered martyrdom for a lie. Due to these reasons, it takes more faith to be an atheist than a Christian. Consider the evidence supporting the idea that Mr. Jesus' claim to be God incarnate is valid. All in all, he didn't answer the question that his video is titled. I would say it takes no faith to be an atheist. Atheists are not required to hold any position on anything other than the proposition that some number of gods exist, and they're only required to not accept that proposition. That is it. End of list. That's it for this one. So what did you think? Do you think Pastor Garrett made some good points, or was he bungee jumping to inaccurate conclusions? I tried so hard, but I had to make that joke. Let me know in the comments below. Overall, this was a straw man after straw man trying to settle his opposition with beliefs that are not required, and then trying to force his beliefs through because he doesn't understand how they could be any other way. If you're not faking your enjoyment for this kind of content, hit the like button. You can get something, my videos, from nothing or close to nothing by hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already. A special shout out to my patrons, Calamitous Anima, Sora, Long-Haired Lefty, Musical Ocelot, Ooga Booga Luga, Tarek Alkasab, Gemmenbaum, Kai Henningsen, and Triple Towel, who are the big bang to the initial singularity that is my channel. If you'd like to always exist in my heart, you can join them for as tiny and dense as $1 a month at patreon.com/DarkOfAllTrades. As the channel grows, all of you are the best encouragement for me. One like, one subscribe, one comment, one share, $1 at a time. It all makes a huge difference to me. Thank you. And as always, keep learning.